Peace, and welcome to Rerootd Radio. This is a gathering spot, a radio station, space for creatives who are committed to wellness and our ancestral remembrance. So if you are new, welcome. If you are a regular, welcome back. Thank you for staying rooted. My name is Kaylyn Wright, aka Kaylyn I, and I'm the host of Rerootd Radio. And this is we are diving into just a conversation of artists who are at the intersection of creativity and wellness and how we bring those two worlds together and even question if they're separate at all. And I am really looking forward to the conversation today with a dear friend, and I'm grateful that I've been able to have people that I know on a brotherly and a friend basis for the past few weeks. So we got some good content in store today. And without further ado, just want to take a moment to pause and bring us into the present. So wherever you are at, just inviting you to close your eyes if you're able. And if you are mobile or moving around, just bring your awareness internally. And as you close your eyes, just begin to bring awareness to your feet. And feeling the earth beneath you. Maybe you feel your socks, your shoes, the temperature. Now take a deep inhale through the nose. And as you exhale, releasing the energy down through your feet, grounding in this present moment. Another inhale through the nose. And exhale, releasing through the feet. And this last inhale, maybe the deepest inhale you've taken today. Breathing in, filling up the belly. And exhale, exhaling through the feet. And just coming back to your natural breath. Noticing what has shifted for you just after those intentional moments. And if your eyes are closed, you're welcome to flutter them open. Just notice the first thing that you see around you. First thing that catches your eye. What color is it? What's the texture? Well, let's get into it. Yeah, this felt important today to start because I don't know if you know, but yesterday was the Chinese New Year or the Lunar New Year, and that fire horse energy is not playing. So we just need to make sure that we're keeping our feet on the ground as we're running around. And yeah, today also knowing that this conversation can go in any direction. So I also want to make sure that I'm grounded and present and just allowing myself to feel excited while not getting too caught up in forgetting I'm also the host. So I'm grateful that I have a friend today. And this brother is someone that's really special to me on my spiritual path, but also in my creativity. And yeah, it's been a journey of getting to know myself in another way. If you ever have those friendships where you know that the more you get to know this person, it's like you're also getting to know yourself. And this is someone that has been that for me. And yeah, just an amazing human being. And on top of that, an amazing artist through the lens of film and documentary, who is, to my surprise, I had to look up and didn't even know he had a website until today, because, you know, you got them friends that you don't do your own research until it's time, or you just be hanging out, you just know they're dope. But Raishad is a documentarian, a cinematographer, an editor, and a video journalist. So without further ado, I will let him introduce himself and his other hats that he wears. Please welcome Raishad Momar.
Pew, 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 pew.
You know how to do the long intro.
Look.
Okay.
Oh, it's good to be here.
Oh,
It's
yes.
so good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. You know, this has been a long time coming, so I'm grateful that we worked it out. And yeah, but just please tell the people where you're calling from and just how you feeling today. How are you landing?
I appreciate that. Yeah, so I'm calling in from Baltimore, Maryland. I moved here about 3 months ago. It was in like November of last year, 2025. So I'm still kind of getting the lay of the land here. Um, but before that, lived in Los Angeles. That's where we met, which is crazy to think that it hasn't even been a full year since we
Yeah,
met on some serendipitous stuff. But
right.
yeah, I've lived in a lot of different places, traveling for work and working as a journalist. Um, because originally I went to school for journalism, and when I graduated, I really wanted to work in a TV newsroom. So the whole model was you got to start in these small markets and work
Mm-hmm.
your way up to the larger markets to be competitive, essentially. And so, yeah, I've lived in so many different places: Spokane, Washington, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then which I'm sure we'll get into really the lore behind all of that and how that kind of speaks to where I'm at now in my creative journey. But it's good to be in Baltimore. It's good to be in
Ashay.
Baltimore. I could say that.
Ashay. Yes. Thank you for calling in from Baltimore. Um, and yeah, even just a quick run through of the places that you've been, because it's beautiful to see that all these different places have their own story, and Baltimore is a new story. And if you shared a little bit, but between the journalism, or I know whatever the words that I shared, but if you want to name any other titles that I missed or share about your creative roles that you play.
Yeah, for sure. I would say, really, I'm a storyteller. Like that is and there's so many different mediums that I use to do that,
Mm,
whether it is through the journalistic lens or whether it's through documentary filmmaking. That's that's really what I'm interested in, right? And so, yeah, documentary cinematographer. I pretty much edit a lot of my own work. Trained as someone who shoots, edits, writes scripts, interviews folks, and turns all of that into a package. I also am a practitioner of Ifa, which is the
Shay,
Yoruba tradition, or the Yoruba spiritual tradition, um, of the people of Southwest Nigeria. And I was initiated into Ifa a little over 2 years ago. So I'm initiate of Ifa, initiate of Obatala, who is an Orisha in the Ifa tradition, who's very much known for creativity, very much known for the manifestation of thought into reality. And all of that uh, is very closely linked to my creative practice. The spiritual aspect and the creative work, I'm finding more and more now, are really starting to merge into one.
it's beautiful. Mm, yes, I guess here is already going to be a juicy conversation. Um, yeah, thank you for bringing your your spiritual practice to the light. I didn't want to like rush into it or get into it, but I'm glad you brought it through at the front. Yeah, connected to that, I also want to hear if you were willing to share as much as you know where your ancestors from and your lineage that um, is responsible for Rashad being before us.
Wow. I really appreciate that question. It's not often that you hear folks asking that kind of question, you know? But it's real. It's like when you walk into a room,
Uh
who
huh.
are you bringing with
Who you
you?
bringing with you? Who we talking?
Okay? It
Who
ain't
we
just
all
you.
talking to today? It's not just Rashad in that room.
They on my shoulder. They all around. Um, so, you know, my more immediate ancestors, many of them come from Georgia, a really small town in Georgia called Woodland, Georgia, where there's only 200 to 300 people who live there to this day. So it really is a village, like a stoplight, actually, along a road. And we've been there for generations and generations and generations on my mother's side. On my father's side, a lot of those ancestors are coming from Florida, Pensacola, Florida, largely. And, you know, I did some of the lineage tracing to see, like, how did y'all get here? Where did y'all come from? And so through Alabama, there was a long time, many generations of folks living in Alabama before migrating to Florida. But a large part of my ancestry is also Yoruba. Um, a large part of the largest ethnic group of my ancestral makeup is Yoruba. Um, and it just makes a lot of sense as to how I was guided into the spiritual tradition. And what I've come to learn is that, you know, for many generations, well, I'll say this. I'm the first one in my family to retrace those steps back to the soil from which we come. For generations, hundreds of years, the first one to go back to Yoruba land in Nigeria and to get initiated into this tradition that a lot of my ancestors were initiated into. You know, I come from ancestors who were initiates of Obatala in Ibadan in that area, which used to be, I believe, the most populous city, or if not the most populous, one of the most populous cities in Africa, and still is very populous in Nigeria. Um, and so, yeah, I'm really thoughtful about that ancestral connection and how it plays into why I was called to be in this tradition in the first place.
Hey, and did you discover that through African ancestry? 'Cause I know we had Danny on a few weeks ago. He was sharing how he discovered his lineage.
Yeah. So it was, well, first it was actually through, uh, I'll say it was confirmed, not through African ancestry, but through a combination of different ancestry DNA
Got you.
uh, platforms.
Who shall not be
And
named.
okay, we don't gotta name them then.
I'm joking. I'm joking.
But I will, no, I will say though, like there's a way that you can use this data. I mean, once I got over the fact that I was sharing my like DNA with these companies, uh, I kind of leaned into it, and I'm glad that I did because it confirmed the information that was coming to me in ritual and just my spiritual practice at large. You know, maintaining an ancestral altar in, or at least building one in like 2020. Like this was all of this really emerged after the pandemic. Um, and I was asking like, where are we from? You know, like where did we come from? And I would just get this feeling, right? Like words would come into my mind, like Alabama. And I'm like, oh, that's got to be wrong. I don't know nobody in Alabama. We don't talk about Alabama. And then actually doing the work on ancestry to, you know, via public records, actually draw back and finding out that actually Alabama was a very long time stay for a lot of my people. Um, But yeah, through a combination of different sites, I was able to determine the area and then get more specific to understand the ethnic group within those areas.
And yeah, it's so important to name because I want to make sure that because even when we hear that, like, oh yeah, I just found out that I was from so and so, but it's such a journey for people to get there. So definitely hoping that people even hearing can understand that, like you said, it took work and it took a mix of this practical like research
Mm,
side, but also your intuition and everything in between. So I really, yeah, appreciate your taking us what that journey looked like for you. And
mhm.
connected to that, um, what was the beginning of your spiritual journey and what was the beginning of your creative journey? If those are separate at all, or if they're connected.
Oh, wow. Okay. I would say the beginning of my spiritual journey really was through yoga. It was through yoga. It was through in 20, oh, wow. So in 2014, my uncle, Roderick Moore, passed. And he was such a huge inspiration in my life and in my family in many ways. Vegan, long before it became a whole thing. Um, Beautiful black man, locks hanging down to his ankles, and many, so wise, so wise. He was a history teacher, and he used to collect different artifacts, African artifacts, that he would teach us about. And I later came to find out that he also was a queer man, uh, that he, uh, and that I wasn't the only one in the family who was queer. And so when he passed, it was shattering. It was earth shattering to me. I mean, it was the greatest grief I've ever experienced. And I remember one of his proteges telling me, I remember him telling me, yoga is really good for grief. It was just as an aside. But I never forgot that he said that. And so many years later down the road, when I was going back to school in 2017, I went back to school to kind of reorient and to leave television news because I found it to be insufficient for the kind of work I was interested in doing in speaking directly to Black and queer communities and young people and feeling like my own peers, my own friends don't watch this, and so who is this for? And feeling just, I really had a moment of needing to reorient, come back to self and figure out what am I trying to do in this field? Is this the right medium for what I'm trying to do? And so I did go back to school and I went to Columbia Journalism School and I was just asking all sorts of questions. Like my intention was to figure out what is journalism? Like, what is it outside of what mainstream media has portrayed it to be in the West? What does it mean to have your own unique perspective that you're honest about, right? That informs your journalism. When I was at that school, that was my first time of really facing um imposter syndrome. Like that was the moment that I really was starting to question like, "Oh, am I smart enough to be here? I'm listening to brilliant minds, to my left and to my right, and I'm really questioning myself." And I fell into a really deep depression, actually. It also was New York, and so it was a lot of energy, it was cold. I'm in like this tiny room sharing, space with like four different people, and I needed something to break me out of my mindset. And it was yoga. It was yoga because I remembered what my godfather had said, that yoga is really good for grief. And so I found a yoga place around the corner from me, and it was at 7 a.m. and I would wake up every day. It was the motivation that I needed to get up at 6 to get there. And she was sure that this particular yoga teacher, to at the end of every yoga session, rather than going into traditional shavasana, where you just kind of lay on your back and let the energy kind of settle in, we would go into a meditation. She would sit upright and she would have us in meditation. She was very stern. Like her energy was very organized. And it helped me to really activate a level of neuroplasticity to develop a new mindset around what was possible in my life around that time. And so that became my practice. I would get up every day and I would go there every day. I got my mom gifted me a yoga mat. And that was the beginning of me like, oh, this is now my practice. Now I don't have to go to a studio to do this. I can do this in my own home, on my own time, in my own way. And rather than having someone else dictate to me what the next pose is, I intuitively feel in my body where I need to go, what needs to open up, um, and how to breathe through the moments, you know? And so essentially it was through yoga. I eventually went, after I left grad school, I moved to Philadelphia and I was working at the Philadelphia Inquirer for a bunch of years as a video journalist for them. And uh, while I was in Philly, I took a yoga teacher training class. And so I got my 200 hours. But I was clear. I was like, I'm not doing this yoga training to try to be an instructor per se. Like, I'm doing this yoga training for me, for my spirit. And so many experiences happened during that. It was, oh my goodness. Studio 34, West Philly, an incredible community oriented place. Like, there's so much I can say about modern yoga in the West and what it's become, but this was a place that was very clear. Like, this is a decolonized, like, our intention is to decolonize ourselves and our communities. And yoga can be used as a part of that. It can be used for many things. So I remember, I think there was, we had a weekend where we were introduced to the chakras. And there was a guided meditation that someone went and gave us around the solar plexus chakra and like lion energy. And when I tell you, you felt the energy in the room almost like explode. Like there was so much energy. When I came out of that meditation, I felt like I was on fire in a way I had never been before. And that let me know, like, oh, there's more to this reality than what we are shown or taught. And I think that was the beginning of my like interest in maybe exploring more what that could look like for me. But in terms of the creative piece, that dates back. Like I was writing stories when I was a child, like 9 years old, had a whole journal, like, them little composition books.
Yeah.
I had a whole like little that we used to have like in the third grade, and they were so cool because they were like actual books. I used to write in that and write whole stories. I would be at my grandmama's house in Woodland, Georgia, writing whole stories about people with superpowers and which powers I had, which powers they had, because I was an X-Men aficionado. You know what I'm saying? And that was really the beginning. I think it started from like creative writing at an early age.
I can already hear too this like you said, the creativity started earlier, but you already writing from a place of like superpowers and magic and imagination. It almost sounds like yoga and your wellness practice put you back in touch with that. Um, you saying like there's more to life, or like I felt this energy in the room. It's like little Raishad was like, wait a minute, I remember this. Like
Right.
this is like, we need more of this. So I
Right. Am
love
I
that.
Storm
Yeah.
in real life?
Uh-huh. Said, hold on, we need to get back to the stories.
It's something to this. It's true. It's true. It's so interesting, like looking at it now, because I'm like, there's all of these stories come from a place, whether it's anime or whether it's like X-Men or whether, I mean, it's like they
Yeah.
all come from some kind of tradition. A lot of anime is stemming from Shinto spiritual traditions in Japan, which are all about ancestral veneration, the acknowledgement of elemental spirits, and these kinds of things that, you know, really build out a very complex universe.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting being able to draw that. Well, I hadn't drawn that connection, so I really
Yeah.
appreciate that.
I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. I say. Um, Speaking of, just drawing the connections and how things, yeah, just tie into each other. You did share, I mean, you've already shared a plethora of practices that have kind of helped and sustained you. And now that you're in a place where, you have a deeper, like a discipline, spiritual science that you're practicing in Ifa, you still have your meditation practice, your yoga practice, and made that shift from, getting out of the newsroom, going into more independent and how to speak directly to your people. What are the practices that like you use to keep yourself um in that creative space? And well, what am I trying to ask? Like, because you're working with something like documentary
Mhm.
and capturing the real like essence of what's happening. Um, yeah, what are the practices that help you stay in
Mm.
touch with that magical, imaginative, and there's more to life
Mm.
while bringing through to help people see the truth and reality?
Mm. Wow. Well, number one, it's recognizing that there is, if we want to call it magic, we could call it magic. We could call it so many things. Um, but there are miracles and there are unexplained things happening every day in our actual nonfiction lives, right? Like in reality, that is also happening right here. And so thinking about documentary as a form of storytelling is really fascinating because there's one lens that you can, and I think this is a part of why it was important for me to break out of the traditional newsroom at that time, because we had to tailor our stories to an audience that would be able to, we had to make sure that everything that we were putting out was understood by our audiences. Many people coming from many different backgrounds. And so you do have to explain, and there has to be some kind of logical, uh, uh, kind of explanation, right? A logical
Right.
understanding of the phenomena that you're exploring. Whereas now, how I'm interested in documentary, I'm interested in some of the things that don't necessarily have words that sometimes get communicated in between the lines,
Mm.
right?
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
you know, I think my spiritual journey is deeply woven into how I approach being on the ground with a camera and tuning into what's happening in real time to follow the energy as it's moving. Because once it happens, you actually can't repeat that, right? You
Right.
can't go back in time. I can maybe direct you, hey, I missed this, right? Could you please do this again for me? But now the energy has shifted and now you're performing. And there are times where that happens and needs to happen for me to get a particular shot that's, it's just like a technical kind of like punctuation in the story so that we have a conjunction, we move forward. But then there's moments where the unexpected happens. Um, I'm thinking about, there was a shoot where I went to Minnesota, St. Paul, Minnesota, to film with an organization. There's a Black women led organization called Brown Body in Minnesota that essentially is an ice skating cohort or collective, that's exploring freedom in the body for especially for Black women. And they wanted me to come through to essentially film a weekend, an artist retreat that they were having. And so I go and I'm on not on the ice, but they're on the ice, and I'm trying to do a very difficult thing, which is filming them from afar on the ice in an intimate way, but also paying attention to what's happening off the ice. And there was something that just said to me, like, I heard this, right? Go to the locker room right now. And so I go to the locker room, and one of the girls is there, and she is taping up her toe. She's like wrapping tape around it. And this is something that I think a lot of dancers will do, but also that she has to do regularly because of how physically painful it is to be in those skates on the ice and to be, I mean, she was in excruciating pain in that moment. And so it opened up a conversation where we got to talk about the kind of pain that really that these Black girls are enduring and pushing through in order to perform in white spaces, largely for white audiences. And I mean, there are so many different layers to that conversation, right? Physically, but then talking about like the actual emotional and spiritual burden that you carry, you know, that's a moment where I'm like, okay, there's clearly something else happening here. And if I just listen and tune into the intuition and where it's guiding me to be, I'm going to be able to capture it. And that's going to translate into something on camera that you will feel beyond if I just sat her down and interviewed her and asked, hey, so can you please tell me about what is, it's not the same. It's not the same. So I'm interested in that. Um, yeah, that's, it's just one example. Yeah.
Beautiful one too. Yeah, you bringing your superpower to your work. Um, this intuitive voice that you have or that walks with you, and the your attunement to your spiritual practice has brought you um almost what I'm hearing is like you have a more clear vision with the lens, like you're able to clear out whatever's in between so that you're bringing through more than just what people are seeing. um yeah, I love that story
Yeah.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it gets really deep, actually. There's so
Mm-hmm.
many layers. And when we talk about Ifa, like this is something I need to
Bring it
do
there, bring
right
it
now.
there, take us there.
Um, because I'm thinking about what does it mean to be a witness? And in that moment, as a person who's holding a camera, you're coming in as a witness to something. And, I think traditional journalism would tell you you are to be a fly on the wall, you are to be an observer, not one who interacts, right? Like you kind of want to minimize your presence as the journalist and depict things as they are. But what I learned and why that shoot was so important in particular was because Deneen, who was the owner of Brown Body, she brought me in and she said, no, we want you to be a part of these conversations that we're having because you're a part of this too. And so the very nature of you observing something does actually change the thing. It does impact the thing, right? And I think about that all the time in terms of the divinity of witnessing. Ifa, when we talk about what is Ifa, Ifa is many things. It is the name of the spiritual tradition of the Yoruba people, and it also speaks to a particular divinity, right? Whose name is Orunmila. It speaks to someone who we know is the witness to creation. Orunmila, it's said that Orunmila witnessed each individual soul choose its destiny before coming to earth, and that we're here to remember what that destiny is because we come to earth and we don't remember. And so the reason why we initiate to Ifa is so that we can remember, so that we can be brought back into alignment with the destiny that we chose. And because he is the witness to creation and the witness to destiny, we were able to talk to him and be like, hey, can you remind me, like, what am I here to do? You know what I mean? Like, am I off track? Is this person actually in alignment for my destiny for me to, like, there's so many aspects of what it means to be in alignment. And as a witness to something, like there's love there. As I develop my relationship with these energies, I'm learning that at the root, it is actually relationship. And it informs how I move as a journalist. It helps me to recognize, right, that just like Orumila is someone who I seek counsel from, and I'm learning that he actually shows up in ways that are more than just like objective. I guess what I can just say is that there's love there.
Yeah.
And I want to be intentional about the ways that I'm showing up behind the camera in the same kind of way. There's layers to it.
Yes. Yeah. And I love how you're pulling them back for people too, because knowing that people who are new to E5, or this is someone's first time hearing about it, um, yeah, you're definitely shedding some light on just your personal experience, which I feel like that's the best way to understand something. Is like, this is how it's impacted me. I'm not saying like on a world scale, this, and that. It's like
Right.
me as Raishad, as a journalist,
For
this is
sure.
how it impacts my practice. So yeah, I think it's really helpful to bring that groundedness to people. Um, yeah, I mean, you diving right in, but I wanted to get into if you want to share a little more about how your practice and what's informing your eye as a journalist and you being a witness.
Mm.
You did share a little bit about your mental health and how like that season of depression that you experienced in school. Um, how does your creative practice of being a journalist and a witness and a storyteller support your wellness and your well-being, um, and vice versa? You could bring in your spirituality as well.
Well, to be honest, it goes back to what it means to be in alignment with your path and what you came here to do. For me, all of those things, I am very clear, serve a specific goal, right? There are so many stories that haven't been told, particularly when it comes to our communities. And even if they've been told, they haven't necessarily been told with a whole lot of nuance, complexity, you know, or from our perspectives. And so I'm very clear that there's work to be done. Like, I'm very clear that I think we're in a moment where, as a collective, and I come from the perspective of Ifa, but I also have so much respect for all spiritual traditions. And I really feel that there's so many ways that God reveals themselves to us, right? We're in a moment right now where I think within the diaspora of African people, we're essentially returning back to a lot of the things that have been lost, or a lot of the things that have been extracted from us, we are reclaiming. And in ways that we necessarily, I would say, where a lot of us are in conversation with the movement of the 60s, right? The Black Power movement. A lot of us are in conversation with even like the idea of this return to Africa, right? It's something that's happening now more often, if not physically, intellectually. Um, and I bring that up just to say that I'm interested in being a part of that movement, and that the work that I do as a storyteller is in service to that. It isn't just random. I'm not just following my whims, right? I'm I know that every project that I'm guided to be on, there is a reason for that, and there is healing in the work. It's here to heal me. It's also here to heal my lineage. It's also here to heal our community, and it's a part of a larger collective movement that we are all taking part in. So all of that for me makes me feel like, oh no, there's reason for this. I'm like, there's things to do, right? It inspires me. It helps me to like, it really lifts me on the days where I, I don't want to get up. Like it, it helps me to remember that there is a reason for this. And I've made it this far, you know, also understanding that I come from a lineage of storytellers. A lot of us do. A lot of us come from, and I think I want to be careful about saying that a lot of these stories have never been told because they have been told. We have been telling them in our living rooms, our grandmothers, our uncles and aunties. We come from storytellers. We are oral people. And even my Uncle Rod that I was speaking of earlier, right? There is footage, old VHS tapes that I was able to recover and digitize that were in my grandmother's home of uh of gatherings that the family would have where they would get together for like an elder's birthday. It wouldn't even be the elder's birthday. It would just be a random day where they were like, no, we're going to get together and we're going to celebrate these elders. This is the day that we're celebrating Auntie Maggie, you know, and they would rent out a community space and they would have a program and they would print out the program. They would give it out to everybody. They would open it up with choir. Okay. They would make sure to sing down. They had somebody on the piano and folks would get up and they would individually give speeches. They would tell stories. They would tell stories. And one of the things he said in the tape, he said, and it felt like just a really powerful moment. Um, he was like, our young ones need to know the torch that they carry. They need to know where they come from. And they need to know the way that things are done, the way that things have been done. He said that in his speech in the 90s that somebody just happened to be videotaping that I found in my grandmother's home after she had passed away. Right. And so now I'm realizing, oh, that's why I'm here. Like, this is what I'm doing. You said that this is why this has to be remembered. I'm literally in your footsteps. And so it's all just a part of a lineage. It really does empower me to do what I do. And I think that helps me feel stronger on the days where I just don't be having it.
Yes. If you could speak a little more to actually how you're integrating your ancestors into your work, things that you plan on working on in the future. Yeah, how is that manifesting in your work?
Yeah. Well, I'm working on a film right now. And this was an idea that came to me when I was sitting in a cafe one day randomly in Philly. It was like, doop, and like dropped in. And I was like, I need to go to Georgia. Like, I need to go to Woodland, Georgia, this little town. And I need to not just archive what's there before it's lost, before the elders age out, people have moved away, but also just explore what spiritual memory is still present in this land. Like, what collective memory outlasts the individuals transitioning that. And so that's what I'm working on now is it's a kind of experimental documentary exploring the nature of our collective and spiritual memory, especially in the South, as a portal for so many ancestral practices that predate slavery, that predate colonialism, um, and the ways that the Black church has retained a lot of that knowledge and a lot of those practices, even within the walls and the boundaries of, you know, uh, Christian traditions. So that's one way. And I think just at large, I'm still exploring what does it mean to integrate the spiritual into the filmmaking work, right? How can you make a spiritual film? Like, what is a spiritual film, right? not just a film that's about spirituality, but an actual film that's doing spiritual work in real time. Where we're talking about so many different elements that it takes to put a film together, sound, visuals. And I think all of those things can be in service to uh getting people into the right mindset to receive things that they might not have otherwise received. And I think a really good example of that is the Black News film. I've been telling people about this film, Black News Terms and Conditions by Joseph Khalil, and a host of other people who collaborated on this film. To me, that is one of the most important films I have seen in the last, like, since Moonlight. I think it's the most important film I've seen since Moonlight. Because it's doing that. It's a very experimental, kind of non-linear exploration of Afrofuturism and African history in a way, and exploring Marcus Garvey's ideas around returning to Africa, kind of through an imaginative lens and a futuristic lens, but also a lens that incorporates like digital media of today and like meme culture and, you know, reimagines what different historical conversations might have been like that W.E.B. Du Bois was having. Um, and I think I just know that while watching that film, I was actively having so many downloads. Like I was in tears. I was in tears watching that film. I was like, yo, they are speaking to me directly. This is a charge to do something, you know? And so I'm curious, how can we all do work that is like it's 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 so tuned into the frequency and the channel that it hits who it needs to hit in the right place at the right time, that it says something to them that's very specific that they need to do, that's on their journey, on their path.
Charged to do something. Um, yeah, I definitely want to follow that thread a little more as we come to a close, because this conversation I feel like could be one of the 90-minute sessions. But
Word.
um, yeah, we definitely would love to continue, and for a piece that people can take with them. If you could speak a little more to like you said, that charge that you felt watching the Black News film, like what is something that what do you feel in this current age where we're at, um, with the AI, with the what's happening in America, just being a U.S. citizen in general? Yeah, what do you feel like is the artist's responsibility in this moment and for the future generations? Um, you shared a little bit about like storytelling and how we've always been telling stories and our ancestors. But now, given these different circumstances, like what do you feel is most important for the artist to remember?
Mm. This is still an ongoing question for me, so I can't act like I know the answer. I do not know. But the wisdom that's come to me recently when I've asked the question around what does it mean to prepare for a future, knowing not that AI is coming, but that AI is here. The answer that I've been getting is it's all the more important to be, to have purpose, to have intent behind the work that you're doing, right? I think the days of just aesthetic and beauty alone being sufficient or being interesting, those days are over. Like, this is not the time to be overly concerned about empty beauty. Really, this is the time to be almost like getting dirty, like not being afraid to get messy with it. Like I I'm very clear that AI, I mean, it's a tool that that can be used in a lot of different ways, just like any other tool. But one thing that it cannot do it cannot replace the uh uh or emulate the very deep like ancestral pull that guides us to recall who we are and help us along the actual journey, along this actual movement, along this actual revolution, right? In service of that. Um it doesn't replace it. It can support us in that work. So I think we just all need to be really clear about like what are we here for? Like what do we really care about? What are we really here to support? Because there's something huge that's happening right now. Like this is a historic moment. And I really feel that we all have our own part to play. We just have to get clear on what feels right, what feels like it's aligned for us, you know, so that we're clear on our motives.
That part. Thank you. Thank you. Um, one last question before we close out.
Mm,
Yeah, if you could leave the listeners, so if someone's listening and they're experiencing any writer's block, if they're experiencing maybe their own, like you said, their detachment from their purpose, or they don't have that clarity,
mm.
what is something, a tangible practice or tool that has helped you come out of those moments? And yeah, something that you can share to encourage them to try out.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Mm. What's coming to me is nature. Nature, 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 nature. Like that is the key. There's so much creativity that's happening in nature. And sometimes it's just a matter of slowing down so that you can witness it and allow it to kind of reinvigorate that spark. Whether that looks like going to a mountaintop, going to the riverbank, and just meditating there, being in silence, letting the water actually wash over you, you know? Um, I and I think that the honest reality is that like we don't always know what step to take or how to get the next piece of creativity. Sometimes it comes in bursts, and it's being patient with yourself as well, allowing for that space to be open because even in asking the question, there's an openness to there being an answer on the other side. And there's been so many moments where I've had to ask myself that. Even recently, a few months ago, I was just like, is this really what I want to do? Like, I just want to be a filmmaker. Like, no shade, but I really was like, I started asking myself these same questions about the future with AI and technology, and feeling like, oh, well, maybe I need to explore something else to like equip myself in the workforce for a changing landscape. And I started doing research looking into, oh, maybe I just do some, I don't know, tech. Maybe is it IT? Maybe I go into IT. And I think through the open question, I, and through the research, I, I realized like, that's not where my spark is. That's not my spark. I would be doing this simply for the monetary gain of it, which I could do if it's in support of something else that I'm doing.
Mm.
But the spark is in the storytelling. I just have to remind myself of that. Um, but I really want to encourage us to be okay with sometimes needing to ask the question, to check back in, to check back in that that's not a failure. That is not a failure. And it doesn't mean that you're lost either. It can be a part of the process. I think every now and again, it's actually important to take that pause, you know?
It's key.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yes. You just remind me of Rick Rubin, his book. He tells a brief story in there where this woman, she's coming into the studio and she's having her own artistic like insecurities around like, oh, I don't know how I feel about the album and da da da. And he just straight up
Mm,
asked her like, who's forcing you to do this? like, do you want to do this? And he was like, okay, well, let's stop right now. Like, you don't have to be an artist. You can, we'll just stop the album. And then like her reaction, like, no, no, like I want to do this, da, da, da. But it was just, yeah, just that Zen master moment of like, oh, wait, like I am choosing to do this. But I love how you're inviting in that question of like, just give yourself that permission to go that direction to see how it feels. Like, you know what? This is not for me at all. Or, yeah, I can't imagine my life without this, without me expressing myself this way. So I just really appreciate that wisdom of that curiosity and where it led you and where you went to a point where it's like, no further. I will not be IT tech. Rashad, if you could please share, yeah, what's one thing you're leaving with, and how are you feeling leaving this conversation?
Wow. Well, first of all, I just am so grateful for the space that you have created on this podcast. And it's such a like natural flow out of who you are and the character that you have in life, because I have not been like on camera in years. In years, okay? I have a lot of trauma from being on camera,
Yep.
right? I have there's reasons why I switched to being behind the camera. And for me, this experience it's been really healing actually, to know that it's possible to create a safe space where um it's okay to be yourself,
Mm,
right? And that it's okay to lean into the public gaze too. Because I think a lot of the work that a lot of us are doing, it does at some point ask us to be in the public eye. And I never want to hide from that just because of my own little insecurities. Like, girl, my insecurities are not that important.
mm.
My ego
When
is
it,
not that important.
right. When it comes to the mission, your
Um,
purpose, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's one thing I'm really taking away is, you know, how we're all kind of guiding each other. Like we're guiding each
Mm,
other home. We all have medicine
mm,
for each other. And you've given me a lot of medicine just in cultivating the space and giving me the microphone. So yeah, I pray that there's medicine in this conversation for someone else too, and that we can keep doing this because we actually do need each other. Like we are the medicine for each other.
mm-hmm.
So just that, I have a lot of gratitude, and I'm so 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 grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hey. Mm-hmm. Warm, feeling the warmth all the way from Baltimore. Thank you so much, Rashad. And yeah, I really do know that if it was healing for you and you felt it, that it's definitely gonna spread and ripple throughout the sound waves. And I felt, online and activated and my own ideas and downloads coming. So yeah, just really grateful for your clarity and your sincere expression that you're speaking from, and could tell like this is a moment of reclamation for you too. So thank you for allowing me to be a witness, and for everyone that's listening, so that we can, know that we're not alone. So I'm
I sure.
more than grateful that we got to make this happen, and really want to thank everyone for listening. And yeah, definitely want to encourage whatever stood out to you, whatever you heard. It's always helpful to hear, because you kind of help where the conversation goes next too. So leave a comment, let us know wherever you're listening, whether it's YouTube, whether it's a podcast on Apple, Spotify, yada yada. Yeah, just let us know. And always check the show notes. If you want to connect with Raishad Momar and his work, I'll link his website, his Instagram, and everything in there. So check out the show notes. And yeah, stay tuned. I know there will be some more films coming out from this beautiful being soon. And join the email list so you can stay tuned into Rerootd and what we're doing. We'll also be having some virtual events coming up, so I'm excited about that. And always, always stay rooted. Peace and blessings.